Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Brian Briganti here at Red Leaf Ranch, and today I want to share with you something that I'm really excited about. As you can see, I am outdoors. It is a beautiful day here in Tennessee in mid-February, and the temperature is starting to warm up. Spring is around the corner, and it's almost time for the next growing season. So it's a really great time to start planning the garden. So I want to share with you my 2021 garden plan. For those of you who have been following for a while now, you should know that this is only going to be my second year of gardening ever. Last year was my first year really diving in head first into the world of gardening. I was born and raised in Chicago. I lived in New York for 3 years, and I moved away from city life to the countryside of Tennessee. I felt a calling to the natural world and to really reconnect with Mother Nature. Seeing the way the world is going in terms of, climate change and the real impact we as humans are having on the environment, I really felt like it was time for me to do something. So here I am. Now, going into the second year, I've been doing a lot of research about, more effective ways of gardening. And within that, I stumbled upon permaculture, and it has completely shifted my perspective on gardening, on living all together, and I feel like it's really paving a path for the future work I want to do here at Red Leaf Ranch. When I first started researching gardening, there were so many articles and tips, all these things about like shutting out wildlife and creatures and pests to cultivate your crop. And I tried a lot of those techniques without much success, just because there's so much wildlife here in Tennessee, especially where we are, that it was so hard to control everything. And really, I'm not that kind of person anyways. I'm really go with the flow. And I try really hard not to control that much in my life, because at the end of the day, we can't control life. The only thing we can't control is our choices and how we respond to things. So that philosophy and permaculture just like sync up, they're in sync. So what is permaculture? It is really the idea of creating an ecosystem within your garden that works in harmony with the natural world around it. So rather than trying so hard to control and keep everything out, you invite everything in, and you create this sort of balance within your garden so that it thrives in the way nature intended it to thrive. It is developing a healthy and balanced ecosystem within your garden, within your home, and within yourself. I really feel that with the direction the world is going, permaculture can really be the key to how we distribute and grow our food around the country and the world in a way that nurtures the planet rather than depletes it. So with all of that in mind, I designed this garden plan this year to really work in harmony with nature rather than shut it out. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, and here she is. I actually designed this myself in Photoshop based off of other plans I saw other gardeners make. Now, just so you know, I did do a really deep and extensive blog post on this garden plan. I'm not really sure how this is going to translate on camera, but if you want to take a better look virtually, it is up on our website, and I'll link that below for you guys. But I was so excited for the garden this year that I actually went ahead and illustrated this and brought it to life, so we have a really clear picture of what I envision the garden will look like. So here she is. Oh my gosh, so much better. As you can see, I was just so inspired. I am a huge believer in our power as humans to manifest. And when you transfer your visions, your ideas to paper, I feel like it puts out so much energy to attract anything that you want. So I felt like I just had to draw the garden so that hopefully it really comes true and manifests. So let's walk through piece by piece and I'll explain to you some of my choices. So I guess we'll start with our center bed here. Last year I learned that tomatoes really want a lot of room to be able to sprawl out and vine, so I want to give them a nice trellis. And there's this beautiful trellis in the center bed here, and I think it'll be a really good home for tomatoes. And then the far back I'm going to have a variety of peppers, and in the front I'm going to have lavender. And on the edges I'm going to have marigolds and calendulas. I'm very inspired to plant a lot of flowers throughout the garden because, you know, within this idea of permaculture, you want to invite a lot of the natural wildlife into your garden. And calendula and marigolds and nasturtiums as well, they attract a lot of beneficial insects to the garden. You know, we have our pollinators that we really, really need so that our crop can pollinate and produce fruit, but it also attracts beneficial predatory insects that will help control pest populations. And then on top of that, it looks beautiful, and there's a lot of recreational, medicinal, and culinary uses for a lot of these flowers and herbs. So I think it'll give a really beautiful touch to the garden while also giving great benefits. Now, as you walk through the center aisles here, you're going to reach the arch, and there's going to be a beautiful arch of zucchini rampicante and cucumber sour gherkins, and I think they'll vine up the trellis beautifully and really give a beautiful display. You know, it'll be a really beautiful centerpiece as soon as you enter the garden with the fruit hanging. It's just going to look really beautiful. And then on the outer edges, I'm going to plant these imperial Japanese morning glories that I think will contrast the yellow flowers and the bright green and light green fruit of the zucchini and the gherkins with their purple and violet flowers. I think it's going to look really beautiful. Now, within permaculture, you really want to encourage the native wildlife. So planting a lot of native species of plants to attract the native wildlife. So in theory, you know, these morning glories might not actually follow the ideas of permaculture. It would be considered an exotic plant, but I still think it'll do a nice job of attracting pollinators. As long as the entire garden isn't full of exotic plants, like we have so many native flowers in the perennial border that Dominic planted last year. And I think that's going to do a really great job of attracting our native wildlife. So now let's talk about the corn bed as we venture further back. I'm really excited about this plot. We've been amending the soil back there for the past year. And I know it takes quite a few years to amend soil, but I think it's off to a great start. And we're gonna plant directly into the soil. So we're gonna have big groups of corn with beans planted around so that there's a beautiful symbiotic relationship there. You know, corn and potatoes, which will be planted in this bed as well, take up a lot of nitrogen in the soil. And beans actually fix nitrogen back into the soil. So I think it'll be a really nice balance in terms of the soil there as well. And it'll look really beautiful climbing up the corn. And I'm gonna get bamboo sticks and actually create a teepeed trellis over the potatoes so that we have more beans that are able to grow up and also shadow the potatoes when the sun gets very intense in that afternoon sun during the summertime. It also acts as a means of getting our beans more efficiently because the pods will just hang down the trellis. It'll be really beautiful and I can't wait to see how that plays out. And then on the far edges, I'm going to be planting comfrey, which is like a miracle plant in the garden. If you haven't heard about comfrey, it pulls a lot of nutrients from deep, deep, deep within the soil. Its roots go so deep underground, it's like pulling ancient nutrients back up. And essentially you cut the comfrey and you can lay it as a green mulch on the actual beds, or you can throw it in the compost, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful plant that helps that regenerative process in the soil. Now, as we venture back into the garden to the right, I'm really excited about this little plot here. Last year I planted corn here, so I laid a lot of cover crop there and mulched it and laid compost to really bring nutrients back into the soil. So this year I'm going to plant melons, a variety of exotic melons. We have an atome melon, a kiku chrysanthemum melon, which is like a white melon, and some long Japanese cucumbers. And I'm going to plant these Mongolian sunflowers, which are one of the biggest varieties of sunflowers that there are. And my vision is that these melons are going to climb up the sunflowers and create this just beautiful cascading wall of melons overshadowed by these massive sunflowers. And it's going to be so, so beautiful. And in the very front, actually, I'm going to be planting, or actually all around this bed, I'm going to be planting nasturtiums. Nasturtiums are very beneficial to squash and melon plants, especially because they deter squash bug and cucumber beetles, while also attracting ladybugs, which are a predatory insect that focuses very heavily on aphids. So it's an all-around great plant to have in the garden. And nasturtiums are edible, so I'm really excited to be growing it. I tried growing it last year, but I got a late start on it and it just didn't perform the way I wanted to. And then as we follow down this row here, there's going to be a beautiful line of Brassicas. We're going to have this massive 1,000-head kale, which gets huge, this Russian red kale, a blue kale, and tatsoi, lined with some beans to help fix nitrogen back into the soil because brassicas can be heavy feeders. Another concept of permaculture is the idea of, the garden just keeps providing year-round, so planting perennial vegetables so that each year, again, it's just producing on its own. And there will still be work to do, of course. It's never-ending work in the garden. But if you put these, plants in place to grow back and regenerate on their own, that's one less thing you really have to take care of. A lot of brassicas, at least here in Tennessee, we're zone 7B, perform very well as perennials. Now, to the right, I'm really excited about this little plot here because I'm going to be growing luffa gourds, which I think will be really fun to grow and dry and sell actual loofahs with my soaps. It just makes sense. Like, I have to grow luffa gourds. And when I found out luffa gourds were a thing, I was blown away. I didn't know you actually grew them. They were a plant. I thought, it was like manufactured, but no, it's a plant. So I'm really excited to grow them. And in the front here, we're gonna have tomatillos as well. And be sure to plant, if you're gonna do tomatillos, be sure to plant at least 2 because you need at least 2 to cross-pollinate and produce fruit. And again, on the outskirts of our melons here, or of these gourds, we have nasturtiums to attract those healthy, beneficial predatory insects and also repel pests that we do not want in the garden. And then as we make our way over here, this center area here is going to be dedicated to a lot of leafy greens and brassicas. When I first started gardening, I was keenly unaware of how much room brassicas, more specifically like broccolis and cauliflower, needed to grow. So I planted them so close together, and a lot of them ended up overshadowing each other and they weren't able to grow to their fullest potential. So this year I will definitely keep that in mind and I will space them accordingly. But there is going to be a lot of room in between the crops, so I'm going to make use of that space and plant some leafy greens like spinach, mizuna, and some lettuces because they grow a lot faster than the brassicas do. So they should reach maturity before the brassicas fully mature and I'll get a better yield. So now with this bed here, Dominic is espaliering I don't know if I said that right, these two trees. So he's essentially training them in a line and creating a wall with them, and they're golden apple trees, so that we have better control of, you know, how the light is hitting the leaves so that they can produce fruit more productively. And underneath we have sorrel, which is another perennial plant. I was so pleasantly surprised by sorrel. It's like my new favorite thing to eat at all times. Every time I pass sorrel, I just have to snack on it. It is this beautiful, zesty, tangy, leafy green that is actually a perennial. And I did not think it was a perennial, but the way I saw it bounce back after having a foot of snow really proved to me how much of a perennial it is. It is a strong plant and a really great plant to have as a perennial in the garden. And as we cascade down the bed, we have a little plot here of a moon and stars watermelon. And again, we have lines of marigolds and calendula around the bed to deter pests, but also attract those healthy pollinators that we want in the garden. Then here we're gonna have one of my herb gardens. I have another one over here that's gonna be lined with some sunflowers. And a quick note over here, I really love growing the sunflowers over here because they get super tall and they actually cast really nice shade into the chicken coop, which is here. Sadly, we actually fenced off the garden this year because the chickens were just ravaging the garden. And it was cute at first, but they started getting into the perennial bed, and Dominic is in charge of the perennial border, and he just was not having it. He was not happy. So we're gonna fence them off. There will still be ways to allow them in, but in a more beneficial sense. Like at the beginning of the growing season, I'm gonna let them in to scratch up the beds and loosen up the soil naturally. And at the end of the growing season, I'm gonna let them into the garden to ravage and scratch up everything to give us a clean slate. Okay, now back over here, we're gonna have a little herb garden here with some clary sage, rosemary, lemongrass, and lavender, shadowed by a beautiful apple tree, a Honeycrisp apple tree that we're gonna be growing here. And as we venture upward, this is gonna be my rainbow patch. I'm gonna be growing this beautiful Italian cabbage, I believe. What is it called? Violaceo di Verona cabbage. And it is so gorgeous. It has this like deep red stem, and it ombres out the leaf into this like really nice light green, and it's just a beautiful array of colors in this cabbage. And cabbages also need a lot of room, so in between the spaces I have perennial rainbow Swiss chard. So it's going to be a really fun display of color. We're going to have our perennials there, which is awesome. And again, we have a border of marigolds to attract those beautiful pollinators, repel pests that we don't want in the garden. And last year, growing marigolds, I was just so blown away by how beautiful they are, and I'm really excited to have them growing in the garden. And I dry a lot of the leaves to use or a lot of the flowers, the petals, to use in my candles. And I'll be drying the calendula as well to use in the candles. And now this bed here, I am really hopeful. Last year I tried growing these two varieties of purple peppers. One of them is a murasaki purple pepper, and the other one is a buena mulata pepper. I just had a really late start on them last year, but I'm way ahead of it this year, so hopefully we get to grow them in this bed. There's gonna be a lot of peppers here, so I'm really excited to see how that does. And then the far back of that bed, we're gonna have a wall of a rainbow variety of okras. We're gonna have green okra, red, orange, and pink okra. So really excited to see how those do. And in the far back of the garden, we're making our way back here. We have a wall trellis here where I'm going to plant even more tomatoes. Just a beautiful variety of really big heirloom tomatoes. Really this year I want to focus a lot of energy into preserving our tomatoes and peppers and just a lot of our produce, so that we have reserves for the winter time. A lot of the stuff that we produced last year, we just kind of had to eat it as we harvested it, and it was sad not being able to have that fresh from the garden feel last throughout the winter. And then here we have eggplants, which I'm actually going to be planting in containers. There's another one over here, and I'm really excited for that because last year we essentially went to war with flea beetles, and they ravaged our eggplants. I had to tent them to deter flea beetles from getting in there, but a friend actually told me it's really beneficial to plant eggplants above the ground in higher containers, because flea beetles, you know, come from the ground and they just hop onto the plant. So the higher the plant is, the harder it's going to be for the flea beetles to get to them. As you can see, planting a lot of flowers in the garden to attract, you know, the native wildlife that is recurring. We also have our compost back here. We have our comfrey here, so that we're really in control of nurturing and regenerating the soil. We have this beautiful perennial border that's going to attract a lot of beneficial insects and birds as well. We're going to have bird baths, and I'm also going to be pitching up some little insect houses to really make insects feel at home in the garden. So yeah, that is the garden plan. I really hope I did the walkthrough justice. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I know it was a lot to go through. I am going to leave a link in the description below to the blog post that goes far deeper into the garden plan. So if you want to take a look at that, it'll be below. So as you saw, permaculture played a huge part in my design for the garden this year. And I'm still very new to it, and there's still so much to learn. But I think the greatest thing that permaculture is showing me is that there is a natural rhythm at play all the time. And it's really our responsibility as gardeners, as creators really, to tune into that rhythm. When you tune into that rhythm in the garden, there's this beautiful synergy that happens, and everything just starts to flow. Everything just happens. And I got a glimpse of that last year, but I really think this year, with everything in place the way that it is, it's only going to continue to expand and thrive. And I'm so happy that you guys are on this journey with me. Like, there's so much more to be done here, and I'm so excited because I think permaculture is really paving the way for the future work that I'm going to do here at Red Leaf Ranch, and I can't wait to share it all with you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of our garden plan and this little introduction to permaculture. I really hope it has helped inspire the work that you guys do in your own gardens and in your life as well. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I am so eager to spark conversations with you all. I'm still so new to all of this, and I'm learning every single day, and I'm so happy I can learn with all of you. Please be sure to subscribe and share this video as well to keep spreading the love and awareness for gardening and permaculture. I really think it's the way of the future, guys. I'm really excited to see how it grows and manifests even further. If you want to support the ranch, I'll leave a link below to where you can buy candles or soaps, and all of the proceeds go to benefiting the ranch and taking our work even further. I am Brian here at Red Leaf Ranch. Take care, everyone.